Shortly after the passing of beloved Beth Emet member, my friend and mentor, Haima Levin, Zichrona Livracha, this past summer, I decided to return to a piece of writing she and I had worked on together, my bar mitzvah Devar Torah, which I had not read in a very, very long time. Haima was the director of education at Beth Emet for many years, and she had a way of making Jewish text both accessible and inspiring. I remember her saying that my parsha, Va'era, was an exciting piece of text right in the middle of the Exodus story. She gave me the tools I needed to dig into its rich biblical passages, and she showed me how to find myself within them. Haima helped me to create the foundation upon which I have built my rabbinic voice, and I never got the chance to properly thank her for it. So this morning, I want to read you an excerpt from that Devar Torah, the one I delivered right here, almost 17 years ago. Why Moses? God could have chosen anyone in the world to free the Israelites. Moses said himself that he wasn't a good speaker and couldn't make speeches. So why did God choose him? I think God chose Moses to free the Israelites because Moses had felt their pain. Moses grew up as the son of Pharaoh, only to realize later on that his father was killing his people. He couldn't take that. It tore him apart. And he fled, not returning until God came to him. When I think about this, I think about life today. Moses was not very good looking. He wasn't that strong, and he didn't have a lot of power. God came to Moses not for his strength or good looks, but for his faith. Today, there are many good-looking and strong people in the world. There are also many powerful people in the world. But you don't have to be good-looking or powerful to be a good Jew. You also don't have to be great to make a difference. All you need is faith, hope, and a belief. Now, reading this piece as an adult and rabbinical student was, of course, a humbling experience, but it was also a window into what was a very challenging time in my adolescence. Behind these sentences, I recognize past feelings of insecurity. I see the young boy struggling socially, internally, academically, and wondering, why would someone choose me for anything? In turn, I can appreciate the power of what was perhaps an unintentional metaphor at the time. God's appreciation for Moses was and remains a reflection of how the Jewish community has and continues to embrace me. With Haima and at Beth Emet, I never needed to be the smartest or the strongest or the best looking person to be successful. I just needed to be myself. And not only was that enough, but it was also worth choosing.
I remember when I was preparing for my bar mitzvah in 1998, I was asked what I was most looking forward to, and naturally I said the party and the presents. If I had known I would have had to write dozens of thank you cards until my wrists cramped, I would have answered differently. I view being called to the Torah as a great honor. Maybe one of the greatest we have. After years of study in Beit Sefer and months of preparation with tutors, cantors, and rabbis, we each make the bold choice to affirm our Judaism. And what makes that statement so powerful is knowing that so many Jews before us did not have that choice or that privilege. I say this as the grandchild of a Holocaust survivor. I say this as someone who cannot trace their lineage past 3 or 4 generations because of the violence and oppression my ancestors faced. We call ourselves Am HaSefer, people of the book. We are scholastic people who encourage our youth to be great thinkers and thoughtful human beings. We recognized early on that our minds are our most valuable asset, and we put into practice that the pen is truly mightier than the sword. This is what I like to share with young Jews. It fills me with a great sense of pride knowing that we have an unbroken chain of learned Jews from Sinai to Evanston, who have committed themselves to learning another language, studying and critically thinking about ancient text, and finding ways to integrate that wisdom into our modern lives. We know that freedom isn't always an easy virtue to grasp. We need only look at the book of Exodus to see how difficult the transition from bondage to freedom was. I do not take lightly the gifts we have been given to practice our religion freely, and I am so incredibly proud to continue that tradition, not just for young people, but for people of all ages, identities, and orientations.
My bat mitzvah occurred just a few years before Max's and Cantor Cotler's. I don't have a copy of my Devar Torah, but I do have the service. This is a service my father and I compiled that includes introductions to many of the prayers. In the congregation that I grew up in, which was Solel in Highland Park, it wasn't customary to celebrate B'nai Mitzvah. Everyone was expected to study through confirmation at the age of 16, presumably because we'd be more mature by then, and fewer people would drop out of religious school early. I asked my parents if I could have a bat mitzvah anyway. When my father asked me why, I told him I'd like to read from the Torah. A bit surprised, my father said, "Well, that sounds like a good reason to me." One might think that I wanted a party, and although I enjoyed social events at that age, I knew my parents would never agree to a big party, so I didn't try to take that line of reasoning. I also was serious about reading from the Torah. I found something compelling and mysterious about the Hebrew language in general, and Torah in particular. An ancient text written in classical Hebrew really did intrigue me. I know you're probably thinking, even at an early age, she was destined to become a rabbi. But Max, I think from listening to our singers and our Torah reading today, we have a few others here that I think are destined to go on that same path. I couldn't clearly articulate my interest in Judaism at that age, but there was something there that tugged at my soul. In my experience, I've often found that rituals and traditions draw us in because they touch a part of us that's beyond, or perhaps deeper than can be captured with words. They move us in inexplicable ways if we allow them to. My parents were wary of Judaism because of some unpleasant childhood experiences. But even though Hebrew school had its challenges, I felt compelled to delve more deeply into Jewish tradition. And the process of preparing was a very rich, enriching experience for me. In order to compile this service, and if you do want to look at it, it's kind of funny because these are back in the days before computers. I know that some of you don't know when that was. But you would have to take a piece from another prayer book and Xerox it, and then cut it out, and then tape it in. And then I have things that are written here. And then we would have another piece. I mean, if you talk about the mixture of fonts here, the designers in the room would just go a little bit crazy. And it was also really hard. Who remembers how hard it was to line up things when you had to do the cut and paste like this? It always was a little off kilter. The problems we had as children. But my father insisted that we study the prayer service in order to understand it thoroughly. Integrity was the watchword of my father's life, and he always insisted to each of his children that if we did something, we were going to do it right. And I have fond memories of the two of us poring over books about Jewish prayer while sitting in his downtown office on weekend mornings. My father thought his office would be more conducive to serious study than our home. While preparing to become bat mitzvah, I grew in my understanding of Judaism and deepened my relationship with my dad. Even though I don't remember what I talked about in my Devar Torah, my bat mitzvah Torah portion has always resonated with me. It was Parashat Vayishlach, in which Jacob has his night wrestling match before he meets his brother Esau, from whom he's been estranged for 20 years. 20 years earlier, Jacob stole Esau's birthright and tricked their father Isaac into giving him the blessing due to his older brother Esau. In Jacob's nighttime encounter, he is renamed Israel, the God wrestler, one who struggles to understand God and to live in accordance with the divine values. And Jacob doesn't walk away from the encounter unscathed. His hip socket is wrenched, and he walks with a permanent limp, a physical manifestation of how challenging it is to understand God's ways and live as an upright human being. Being Israel, a God wrestler, is not easy, but it is a path of growth, meaning, and purpose.
Our unique journeys to this bima span generations, coasts, interests, experiences, and yet somehow the three of us have found ourselves here because this place, this text, this people are a part of who we are and who we want to be. So why are you a part of the Jewish community? What does Judaism mean to you, and what is Judaism anyway? Is it a religion, a people, an ethnicity? Judaism is a religion with ritual practices and prayers, but Jews are also people with a distinct story, customs, and languages. Judaism is a way of life and a value system. It also has deep ties and a connection to the land of its origin and to historical sites where our ancestors dwelled, worshipped, practiced their faith, and buried their dead. An ethnicity, however, is harder to argue because Jews have lived and continue to live all over the world and have incorporated a wide variety of cultural practices into Judaism. And there are Jews of every race. Lox and bagels may be quintessential Jewish food for some, but kube soup is where it's at for Moroccan Jews. In her book, Here All Along, Sarah Hurwitz, former Michelle Obama speechwriter, thinks that for her the best analogy for what Judaism is family. There are other belief systems that can provide meaning, joy, and connection, she continues, but Judaism is my story. The story of my large, diverse, loving, sometimes difficult and contentious family. The book is her exploration of Judaism as an adult. It's her story of how she went from being disaffected from Judaism to finding meaning, depth, and purpose. She doesn't claim that Judaism is better than other faiths, but that it's hers to claim because it's her family. It's her story. It's her inheritance. And it's ours too.
If Judaism is an extended family, as Hurwitz posits, then today is our family reunion. As we gather for our annual homecoming, we might feel excited to be celebrating the new year, happy to be with family and friends, whether here in the sanctuary or remotely. We might also feel bored or irritated. We came here to please someone else or out of a sense of obligation, but not of our own accord. Being here may bring up memories of past Rosh Hashanahs and the people with whom we celebrated. We may feel nostalgic, wistful, or sad. There are a myriad of reasons we come here today, and there are many different ways we relate to Jewish tradition. This year, we'd like to have a community conversation about different aspects of Jewish life. In order to do so, today we are launching our One Book, One Congregation program for 5783. This year, as a community, we will read and reflect on Sarah Hurwitz's book, Here All Along. Each chapter takes on a different aspect of Judaism. There's a chapter on different ways to think about God and God's role in our lives, how we can understand and relate to Torah, how prayer and holiday traditions teach us values and help us grow as human beings. The chapter on God is called Freeing God from His Human-Shaped Cage in the Sky. And the chapter on holidays is called Jewish Holidays and the Power of a Well-Placed Banana. Are you intrigued yet? Well, the book is primarily for adults, so what about the kids in Beit Sefer? The book is really Beit Sefer for adults, so all of you children here, make sure that your parents study well this year. But adults and students will study together. As your parents read the book, there are discussions I'll have with you, and maybe you can even teach them a thing or two from what you learn in Beit Sefer. Of course, you are also invited to read the book.
And encouraged.
Max, what does the name Here All Along make you think of?
You know, Rabbi, I'm thinking there's no place like home. There's no place like home.
No place like home. Where is that from? Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
Dorothy, she winds her way along the Yellow Brick Road looking for the wizard to help bring her home. But what happens when she arrives in the Emerald City and she finally finds the wizard? She finds that the power to return home has been with her all along. She didn't need to look somewhere else. And this is what Sarah Hurwitz discovered as well. What she needed for her life was right here in Jewish tradition. It has been here all along. As she writes in the conclusion of the book, by sharing what I found in my own search, I'm hoping I've shown you that there's something for you to grab hold of in Judaism, that the seeking and grappling will be worth the effort. But I also wrote this book because I believe that through our individual seeking and grappling, we don't just discover, but collectively help create the kind of Judaism that is worth grabbing hold of. I love how, even when we try to give up on Judaism, it does not give up on us. How no matter how frustrated or distant we become, something still tugs at us, some thread we did not even realize was there.
For myself, for Rabbi London and Cantor Cotler, our Kabbalat mitzvah stories and celebrations were critical to the development of our Jewish identities and feelings of connection to Jewish community and tradition. Our goal is to use Sarah Hurwitz's book as a way to share the stories that have shaped our understanding of Judaism and connection to Jewish community, grow in our understanding of Jewish teachings and tradition, deepen our relationship with each other, and strive together to apply Jewish values to the issues we face in our lives today.
So, is this book for me? Asked the Cantor rhetorically. Whether you are a novice or have been seriously practicing and studying Judaism, the book gets to the heart of many of the hot-button topics in Judaism, such as prayer, God, social justice, and Torah, and offers many insights and inviting ways to approach these issues.
The powerful message of the High Holy Days, it's never too late. We can change and grow at any time if we choose to. And there's a whole community of people doing it with us. I'll tell you a little secret. Other people know much less than you think they do. And your experiences and insights are just as valuable as theirs. I love the surprise and delight that Sarah Hurwitz experiences about Judaism as she begins to explore it seriously as an adult. All you need is a curiosity and openness.
When Sarah Hurwitz describes Judaism as a family, she quotes Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, former chief rabbi of Britain. He writes, "Picture a library filled with books describing various values you could choose to live and lifestyles you could choose to live by. You're free to pull any book off the shelf and browse its contents. If you like it, you can read other books on that topic or by that author. If not, you can just put it back and pick another. But imagine if on those shelves you came across a book with your family's name printed on its spine. Intrigued, you open it and see many pages written by different hands in many languages. You start reading it, and gradually you begin to understand what it is. It is the story each generation of your ancestors has told for the sake of the text. so that everyone born into this family can learn where they came from, what happened to them, what they lived for, and why. As you turn the pages, you reach the last, which carries no entry but a heading. It bears your name. So, Max, how did Dorothy get home?
She simply looked within herself and clicked her heels 3 times.
There's no place like home. There's no place like home. There's no place like home. And there's no place like our Jewish tradition that has been here all along, bringing us back to our roots and helping us propel us into the future. Now, don't worry if you don't have your ruby red slippers with you. Max and I are certainly willing to share if you'd like.
They're very snug.
But we do have for everyone a book. Each household, we have one book of Here All Along, but we do have for everyone, do we have the bookmarks in there, Max?
I think so.
Here we go. We have one book per household, but we have one bookmark per person. So if there are multiple people in your household reading this book, you can each have your own bookmarks so you know where you are. And these amazing bookmarks were designed by our very talented Marcos Siegel Acevedo. And they say, L'dor v'dor, one book, one congregation from generation to generation, here all along. We hope that you'll participate in our collective reading of this book. We're really excited that people of all different ages, all different parts of our community will be reading this book, discussing this book, sharing this book, reflecting on this book, and we want to really embed it into the life of our congregation so that we can grow together as individuals and as a community. So please do join us, and as you leave, make sure one book per household, and but one bookmark per person. And as you go out inside the book, you're going to see a piece of paper that will show you how to register. We want people to register on the website that you've taken a book, because we're going to try to put people into reading groups. And so please, when you open up the book, you'll see it, and take just a moment to go onto the website and to register for a reading group.